Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are strapping on our mawashis, the traditional sumo belts, and stepping right into the wrestling ring to explore a truly special piece of cinema. We are talking about the 1992 Japanese smash hit comedy Sumo Do, Sumo Don't. If you love a classic underdog story that's absolutely packed with heart, humor, and, well, a whole lot of sweat, you are in for a real treat. This film didn't just entertain audiences, it practically overnight completely revitalized the conversation around a deeply traditional sport.
Which really begs the question, doesn't it? How exactly do you go about saving a dying national sport, especially when the younger generation is actively trying to avoid it at all costs? It's a fascinating problem. And to understand how this film tackled it head-on, we've got to take a quick look at the cultural landscape of Japan back in the early 1990s.
Section 1. The unpopular national sport, a cultural barrier.
Now, it might be kind of hard to believe today, but back in the early 90s, sumo was actually facing a massive image crisis. Young people were literally repelled by it. They viewed sumo entirely through the lens of what was known as the 3 Ks. That's kitsui, meaning hard, kitanai, meaning dirty, and kiken, meaning dangerous. Because of this really heavy stigma, university students wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. They were way more into modern, glamorous hobbies, basically treating sumo like a relic of the past. And this huge cultural barrier? That is exactly what our protagonist, a university student named Shuhei, is up against.
So that brings us to the hilarious premise of the film. Shuhei, played by Masahiro Motoki, is just looking for an easy ride to graduation so he can finally take a cushy job at his uncle's company. But his thesis supervisor, Professor Aniyama, who, by the way, happens to be a former college sumo champion himself, has other plans. Aniyama essentially blackmails Shuhei. He tells him, look, I'll grant you the missing credits you need to graduate, but only on one strict condition. Shuhei has to join the university's completely failing sumo club and actually compete in an upcoming regional tournament. No pressure, right?
Section 2. Meet the Underdogs, the Kyou 2 team.
Shuhei reluctantly agrees, but to save the club from being totally dismantled, they need bodies. Actually, they need at least 4 members just to officially qualify for the tournament. And look at this list of misfit recruits they managed to somehow scrape together. First, there's Aoki, the super eccentric, skinny soul-existing member who has literally delayed his graduation for years, but has incredibly never actually won a single match. Then, of course, there's our blackmailed protagonist, Shuhei. Next up is Tanaka, a surprisingly timid student who gets recruited for basically one reason. He has a very sturdy, shuffling walk. They also rope in Haruo, Shuhei's younger brother who happens to be a reluctant cross-dressing pro wrestler. And finally, rounding out the whole squad is George Smiley, a very outspoken British exchange student.
Okay, let's dive into this because the character dynamics here are where the comedy just completely shines. Take Tanaka, for example. He is hopelessly shy and is constantly, hilariously dripping with nervous sweat. And then you have Smiley, the British exchange student. The cultural clash absolutely peaks when Smiley flat out refuses to take off his shorts underneath his traditional sumo mawashi. Seriously, he'd rather forfeit a match than wrestle bare. It just perfectly highlights the completely absurd and challenging situations this makeshift little team finds themselves in.
And, well, things definitely get worse before they get better. The team hits absolute rock bottom during a disastrous training session. Out of nowhere, the rival Hokuto University Club crashes their practice and a massive brawl breaks out. Our Kyoritsu underdogs are left completely battered, bruised, and, most humiliatingly, entirely mawashiless. Ouch. But, it's actually the ultimate low point that finally forces them to truly commit and start training seriously.
Section 3. A critical smash hit, fiction becomes reality.
Okay, so the team's hard work paid off, and I don't just mean for the characters in the movie. The ultimate victory was actually in the real world. The number 5 is absolutely crucial here. Sumo Do, Sumo Don't won an incredible 5 Japan Academy prizes. It wasn't just seen as a fun, popular comedy, it was recognized as elite cinema, taking home the top awards for Best Film, Best Director for Masayuki Suo, and Best Actor for Masahiro Motoki. And the accolades, they just kept rolling in. The film also totally dominated the highly prestigious 1992 Blue Ribbon Awards, once again sweeping the major categories by winning Best Film and Best Director. It proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that a sports comedy about misfits could resonate incredibly deeply with critics and everyday audiences alike.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that this masterpiece hasn't been lost to time. Thanks to Film Movement Classics, audiences today can experience the film in a stunning new 4K restoration. And this wasn't just a quick upscale. The restoration was scanned directly from the original camera negative and supervised by the film's original cinematographer Naoki Kayano. It means we get to see the sweat, the tears, and the colorful mawashis looking better than they literally ever have before.
Section 4. The Director's Legacy, Refining the Formula.
Sumo Do, Sumo Don't wasn't just a one-off lucky hit for Masayuki Suo. It was actually the crucible where he perfected a highly successful filmmaking formula. He masterfully takes niche, unglamorous, or even heavily stigmatized subjects and just transforms them into heartwarming comedy gold. You see his approach to the 3Ks of sumo, right? He took something young people actively avoided and made it deeply endearing. And then he later applied this exact same formula to ballroom dancing, an activity that at the time in Japan carried a pretty negative, somewhat sleazy image for men. And this brilliantly illustrates how the sumo hit set the stage for his 1996 global blockbuster, Shall We Dance? I mean, you can see the DNA of the sumo film all over it. Both films follow somewhat depressed or aimless guys finding genuine passion in an unexpected minor sport. Sumo even brought back familiar faces from Sumo Do, Sumo Don't, most notably the hilarious actor Naoto Takanaka, who went from playing the winless sumo wrestler Aoki to a Latin dance-obsessed systems analyst.
While the sumo film was a huge domestic hit, Shall We Dance completely blew past all previous records. It won a staggering 14 Japan Academy Prizes, basically sweeping nearly every single category. But even more impressively, it became a massive international crossover success, grossing over $33 million worldwide, which, for a subtitled Japanese film in the 90s, is an absolutely astounding figure.
To really give you a sense of its global appeal, just check out this quote from legendary film critic Roger Ebert, who called Shall We Dance one of the more completely entertaining movies I've seen in a while. That kind of praise really validated Suo's absolute mastery of the underdog genre on the world stage, proving that these highly specific cultural stories actually contain incredibly universal human truths.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. Masayuki Suo built a phenomenal legacy out of turning outcasts, misfits, and tired salarymen into unlikely champions. He finds such profound joy in simply showing up and trying against all odds. So it leaves us with one big question. Which underdog will you root for next? If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend tracking down that beautiful 4K restoration of Sumo Do, Sumo Don't. It is a total triumph of heart and humor that you really won't want to miss. Thanks so much for watching, and stay curious.